Greetings and salutations all. Thank you for attending this regular board meeting on July 10th, 2023. We're going to move to item 1.1 immediately for the appointment of Dr. Thompson as our treasurer pro temp. Be resolved pursuant to section 3313.23 of the Ohio Revised Code that Dr. Stephen Thompson is hereby appointed as the district's treasurer pro temp to perform all the duties and functions of the district's regular interim treasurer during the period of this meeting. Is there a motion?
I so move.
It's been moved by Mr. Perry. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. Autry. Is there any discussion? If not, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Molinar?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. Next, we'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Alexander, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll move to community and school reflections. Mr. Perry.
So yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to the the West Akron Baseball League. We affectionately know them in West Akron as Wobble. A lot of our APS kids are students there who play on the teams in that league. We had a championship this past Saturday, and my 10-year-old was part of that championship game, the Pirates versus the Cubs. Unfortunately, we lost 6-4. But all of our APS kids who are members of that West Akron Baseball League, you guys are stand up, great sportsmanship, great teamwork. I'm proud of all of them, so I wanted to give a shout out to them. Thanks to the commissioner, Mike, does a great job with that league, and we've been a member, like I said, for years now. So thank you very much, Wobble.
I think that's well said. Thank you, Mr. Perry. Are there other community reflections? Dr. Monar?
I just have one, but it's about Kindergarten Kickstart. Everyone knows I'm loving the summer programs here, and we have Mrs. Hathaway and Mrs. Semmelsberger actually here with us today. I went to their Kindergarten Kickstart first day today. I tried to be helpful. I wasn't entirely helpful, but I really tried. But I love the program. I love everything they're doing. They're providing students with school supplies and a Resnick backpack, and it's really helpful to see everyone come in. And it's not just the students who are nervous coming in. I saw a bunch of parents who are nervous like it's the first day of school, the first day of kindergarten, and really walking through and holding their hands, parents and students walking through and holding their hands through how to get breakfast in the morning and how to drop off and pick up, which also as a parent of older children, really appreciate the kindergarten parents learning early how to do the drop off and the pickup. Just a couple people doing that, not the way that we all planned, can throw off like a domino rally in the mornings and afternoons. So it's a full day, 2 weeks long, and kindergarten entry skills, they do learning, and thank you for Kindergarten Kickstart.
Let me just piggyback on that, because I've said before that my boys both went to Resnick, and Miss Hathaway taught both my boys in kindergarten. And I saw her today, and my 13-year-old acts like he doesn't know her now when we go out somewhere. But I want to say a special thank you to all the Resnick teachers for sure. Thank you, ladies.
Other reflections? Ms. Autry?
Thank you, Mr. President. And also shout out to King COC, where my granddaughter started Kindergarten Kickstart today. So she was really nervous, and so was Grammy, but it's going to be a great, great kindergarten year for her. And so since we last met, I had the opportunity to attend the College and Career Academy retreat for the steering committee. Special shout out to Marcy Ebright, Beth Winters, and the entire team who put that together. Thank you to all the partners who came out. It was a really informative retreat, even though I was only able to stay there half a day. We were able to see a video from the Ford New Generation Learning Executive Director, and she gave Akron a lot of shout outs for our Akron in Action event that happened last school year, and just gave us kudos for all the work we're doing here. We're like the hot school district for college and career academies. Also, we had a presentation from Dr. Thompson on the Yonder bag. flags. Happy to report that all of the tactical plans from the master plan have been completed. And so based on that, they broke off into some work groups to develop some new things to work on. And so I'm excited about that upcoming work. Also got to hear the student voice from our robotics teams. We have 4 high school teams, I think, and 5 middle school teams, but we actually had students there. They were absolutely incredible. Our future is bright. It was just wonderful to hear from them. Very impressive young people. I'm looking forward to robotics spreading to all of our schools in the future. Also, we had some data outcomes from Mrs. Ebright. We have some really good gains. I'm looking forward to a future presentation, but our freshman academy has really shown some increases in our credits earned. That has some increases, as well as our GPAs as well. And so there were lots of other information that was shared, but I'm sure we're going to be getting that in a future presentation. I think more data is going to be available coming up in the fall. Also, since we last met, I had the opportunity to attend the Pathway to High School Success event that was held over at Litchfield CLC. Again, shout out to Mrs. Strickland and her team for putting that together. So those young people, they picked topics that were of concern to them, and they just had a display board. You kind of walked around, and they had some facts that they shared. And at the forefront of these young people's minds were bullying. I mean, several tables had bullying as a topic. Some of the students shared that they were indeed former bullies, and that's what prompted them to address the topic, because they come to learn that that's just not a good place to be. Another topic was racism. Several tables talked about racism. And not just brown kids. There were kids of other complexions who also felt really strongly about that topic, as well as police brutality and fire safety. So out of the mouths of babes, it was just great to hear from these young people. They were engaged. There was also a group there called Always Climbing, and that's a new student group that's based over in the Firestone cluster. And those young people were touching on to all types of topics, including financial literacy. They feel like that's really important, as well as giving back. And so it was nice to see those young people excited, engaged. There were a lot of community groups there. The fire department was there to present, as well as dietitians from SUMA. So just a great event. And again, thanks to Mrs. Strickland and her team for putting that all together. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. That was quite the update. Thank you for being there, though. Appreciate it. Ms. Ebright, again, kudos to you and your team. Again, hats off as well. Are there? And I would love to see that at a board meeting too. So that way the public can watch that too, see all the gains we've made. So, are there other reflections? Okay, I've got one. So I had a chance to go run in the Charles Marcus third annual 5K. So this is something that happens on North Hill. Mr. Marcus was a long time, he's still alive and kicking. He was a former coach and teacher at North. I actually had him in the early 90s for health class, and he was a fantastic teacher. Mr. Alexander, I'm sure you probably know Mr. Marcus as well. Certainly, so there's a 5K that happens on North Hill now. This is the third year that it happened. It's been supported by some of our APS employees as well, Larry O'Neill and some other folks. And so while I was there, I had a chance to meet the current soccer coach at North High School. And Emily Johnson's her name, and I just wanted to say she was super impressive, her knowledge of the game. And I told her that I'm a big fan of soccer, and I would love to be more involved with that program as well. And so she promised me that she'd send me a shirt. Now I didn't think she really would. I'm like, because she's just being nice. But she sent me a shirt, and I just want to show this off here. This is the shirt that she sent me. Let me stand up. This is me proud. This is the shirt I got. So Viking soccer, but the back is what caught me off guard. The back says 12 countries, 16 languages equals 1 team, 1 family, 1 heartbeat. And this is the back, which is super touching. And so I just want to say, Ms. Johnson, I certainly appreciate you remembering to send me a T-shirt, and you will see me at North High School soccer games here in the fall. So again, and also too, want to thank people that supported the Charles Marcus third annual 5K, also North Hill. So that is my reflection. Are there any others before we move on with the agenda? Okay, next we'll move to request to address the board. Let's see here. I've got, the first one I've got here is it Barry Wise? Yes. Okay. And there's a preamble I need to read as part of what we do. So request to address the board. Participants will not be permitted to speak on matters related to vendors and business matters, formal complaints, grievances, a specific student or student records, personnel matters, and potential or pending legal matters. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The board will not respond, but will assign through the superintendent the appropriate person for follow-up. Okay. Mr. Wise?
Okay. I want to address, now I live in Kenmore. Let's just start that. I'm 49 years old. I graduated from Kenmore High School in 1992. My whole life has been in Kenmore. I married a Kenmore graduate. My parents graduated from Kenmore. My family, all of them, aunts, uncles, graduated from Kenmore High School. Since 1992, when I graduated, we have lost 6 schools. Pfeiffer's closing will make 7. Okay. In previous board meetings, there's been, mention of the Kenmore revitalization movement. I just feel that that's kind of ironic. We're trying to build our little sector of Akron back up. You guys are tearing it down. You take away our schools. You lower our property values. People don't want to raise children in neighborhoods that don't have a school for that child to go to. Okay? They don't want to send their kids across town to go to school. They don't. We were promised, you pass this levy, we will build you a new high school. We will build you new schools. You've closed more than you have rebuilt. You combined Kenmore and Garfield. We were told there'll be a new school name, new mascot, new colors. No. The football uniforms. I played football from the time I was 8 years old. Bled, cardinal red. Wore that cardinal on the side of my helmet proudly. I still have Kenmore memorabilia in my house. I could have brought in here totes of it from my home. Okay? Went to the first football game as Kenmore Garfield. Kenmore was on the back of the jersey like it was an afterthought. There goes Garfield, Kenmore, Rams, maroon and gold. No black, red, and white. No mention of the Cardinals. And you know what's ironic? Garfield, when I was in high school, Garfield was one of our sacred enemies. My junior year, we beat Garfield for the first time since 1973, 20-0 in the Rubber Bowl. But here we are. Now you're talking about closing Pfeiffer. I've heard that they're going to combine the kids from Pfeiffer and the Reimer and Sam Salem. I have grandchildren in Sam Salem. There's not enough room now. The librarian goes classroom to classroom with a cart because they're using the library for intervention specialists. Where are you going to stick these kids? Now, here we go. We're going to build North High School, rebuild North High School, pass a levy, and then we'll take care of Kenmore. I understand you can do Kenmore, got to pass a levy to do North. Don't come at us promising, we're going to do North and you pass this levy, then we'll take care of you. We've been lied to before with that same promise. Pass this levy, we'll take care of you. I don't believe it. As I see here, a lot of people probably don't believe it. Build a building, put Pfeiffer, Miller South. You guys need a STEM room, build one big enough, put STEM in there too. Kenmore will gladly take everybody. It's easy to sit in a boardroom, in a room, wherever, and make decisions about a community that you don't live in, about schools that you don't have children going to. And sometimes, because an idea looks good on a piece of paper, doesn't mean it's a good idea. And I'm here to tell you, if you don't start taking care of Kenmore, my property value's going down. I'll never vote for another levy. Why should I pay taxes for a school that my grandchildren don't have to go to? And if you ask any true Cardinal, Garfield doesn't count. You built a new school right where Garfield High School was. You took ours. Oh, we gave you a new school. It's called Garfield. Kenmore don't care. That doesn't count. Any true Cardinal doesn't count. We don't care. We don't accept it. I spoke several times. I've sent several emails about this Garfield decision. And now you're going to once again put us on the back burner, maybe put us on the back burner for North. Well, maybe Kenmore's just forgotten thought. Maybe you guys don't care about us, but we do. This is our community. A lot of us bleed cardinal red.
Mr. Weiss, I'm sorry, we're at time.
Thank you.
But thank you. Next, we have Brenda Duenas. My apologies, ma'am.
I'd just like to piggyback off of Mr. Weiss. I'm a 1982 graduate of Kenmore High School. My children graduated from Kenmore schools. I now have a son who's 30 who has moved out of the Kenmore district because his children would not be able to go to Pfeiffer. I have a 23-year-old that's telling me if there's no Pfeiffer, why should he move to Kenmore? This is an aeronautical engineer that's going to graduate and have enough money to buy a house and be there and do things with his kids and have their grandparents right down the road. I live 2 blocks from Pfeiffer. I can, volunteer there, even if they're at Kenmore. And so that's only, 5, 6 blocks. And those are things that I would like to do. I'm saddened by the fact that we have lost 6 schools. This will be our 7th school. And I agree that we don't need to continue to tear apart this community. This community is proud. This community has done a lot to revitalize itself. And all we are asking for is that we don't lose another neighborhood school. You don't know how important it was for me when I moved into where I moved in that my child could walk to school and walk home to his grandmother, who, by the way, my parents bought a house in Kenmore in 1969. And they were there when my children were in school. And my mother moved in to take care of her grandchildren who walked home from Pfeiffer to our house. I think neighborhood schools are important. That's how kids build friends. That's how they build relationships. That's how they have friends that they had in kindergarten and they have when they graduate from college. And I think it's all about a network. And without a neighborhood school, you're deteriorating that network. I'm extremely proud of my boys, but I think part of the thing that they had is they were able to go to the school in their neighborhood. So they liked school. So they studied. So they did well. My youngest went to STEM. He left the Kenmore branch because he was able to go to STEM, but those Kenmore teachers, they advised us. This was a kid with Asperger's. That STEM school was going to provide him with what he needed, but without having those first 5 years at Pfeiffer, we might not have known that. So, and we can't overcrowd our elementary schools because then the kids don't get what they need. My child is where he is today because of what he got from Pfeiffer and from us. But without that kind of school and those resources, he may not be an aeronautical engineer in May of 24. He may not have been able to have that opportunity. But if you don't have the room and the space and the teachers that actually know your kids, then you're missing out on a lot for these students. So I will get off my high horse here and I'm done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have, is it Bill Stone? Am I saying that name right?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is William Stone. I live in Kenmore also. I'm a Kenmore transfer. I grew up in Greene, but I've been living in Kenmore for most of my adult life, married to my wife, Ms. Duenas. Both my boys went to Kenmore. I'm also a 25-year-old veteran of Akron Public Schools teaching science, okay? And I know what the classroom size does to the students. I deal with 35 kids in my science classes, and I can't teach, okay? High school kids are not as bad at a big group because you can diverse more. But when you're dealing with elementary kids, those kids need the individual teacher to student additions, okay? Those elementary teachers are pulled out. They never get to hit science because of all the other things. And if they have 30 kids in a classroom, they're not going to be able to teach reading. I was also a summer instructor and a advisor for the science fair for the last 25 years. I was a summer instructor at the Miller South. That program is a phenomenal program. And bringing those two programs together into one building and maybe bringing in STEM, but still just bringing in those two, those are two of the oldest schools in here. Akron Public decided to eliminate South District and bring it to Kenmore in the early 80s. So they took that neighborhood and transferred to Kenmore. Now they're taking those kids from from the South District and the Kenmore, and they're bringing them to Garfield. As a teacher at Ennis, when I taught there, I was amazed how fast and how far those kids would walk, not being bused, to come from the other side of the lake to walk up to Kenmore High School and to Ennis. I was proud, and I was amazed that these children would make the effort to come. But now you're taking them even further from their homes. You're taking them further from their neighborhoods, okay? So I think that we need to bring Pfeiffer and Miller back into this community, back into Kenmore's community, okay? I've taught night school at North, and I think North is a great school, and I think they have a great program. But right now, we need those schools in Kenmore. North has its school districts and its neighborhood schools, but I think we need to bring back that community and bring those teachers and those students back into Kenmore and bring up that Pfeiffer is one of the best. I had both kids there. I was amazed by the teachers at Pfeiffer, and I was amazed by the teachers at Miller South. And I think the combination of those two, that program, will make Kenmore a much stronger place and Akron Public a much stronger place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Next, we have Tina Boyce.
Good evening, board members. I am Tina Boyes, Kenmore High School class of 1992, Ennis Junior High School class of 1988, Smith Elementary School class of 1986. I'm a fifth-generation resident of the Kenmore community and the third to call myself a fighting Cardinal. I'm here to speak for the many Kenmore families who don't have the luxury of making a 5:30 meeting in downtown Akron, and those who have decided that believe you've already made a decision, and we have no say. The message they want me to relay: stop hurting Kenmore. In 2003, Kenmore residents voted to pass a 0.25% income tax increase with the promise of new schools, including a new Kenmore High School and a new Pfeiffer Elementary School. But what happened? The Kenmore cluster boundaries were shrunk. Population went down, and Margaret Park and Heminger closed. Then Smith and Lawndale closed. Miller South School for the Visual and Performing Arts, a Kenmore cluster school, was moved out of the cluster to feed a performing arts program located more than 4 miles away in a more affluent cluster, with Kenmore High School sitting just 2 miles down the road. And the nail in the coffin, Kenmore High School, a school named for a city more than 100 years before, was closed as an entity in 2017 and merged with Garfield High School, not on a neutral site, but on Garfield's original site, because, as stated in the minutes of the December 12, 2016 board meeting, quote, "It is owned by the district." Kenmore High School is still owned by the district, is it not? And APS needs a home for its aging schools, does it not? It is hard to convince Kenmore families that APS is concerned with them. Imagine being Rick and Joyce Laney, former directors of the Kenmore Youth Football Program, waking up in the middle of the night to a vacant Lawndale Elementary School set on fire by vagrants with flames so hot neighbors couldn't touch their windows. Or Thelma Krebs, or Stacy and Kent Boyd, or Beth and Taylor Ray, whose families get to look out their windows at a rotting Smith Elementary School. Broken windows, a playground overgrown with weeds, maggot-laden trash strung up the sidewalk, and ammunition shells from the occasional shootout, which never used to happen before the school was vacant. This is what happens when APS closes schools in Kenmore. The entire neighborhood suffers. This is what the Kenmore cluster map used to look like, in 1999. Yet after multiple levies, we have gone from 10 schools to 3 schools, and if 4 schools, and if Pfeiffer closes, 3 schools. And if you're a parent of a child under the age of 12, 2 schools, all on the affluent side of our neighborhood. Is this equitable? Are Kenmore voters getting their fair share of taxpayer money? No doubt, North High School needs to be rebuilt. This will require a levy, and no doubt you will need Kenmore voters to pass that levy. I stood on Kenmore Boulevard for 3 hours Friday night registering people to vote, and one of their #1 issues was the schools. Some said there was no way they'd support another APS levy. Others said if we lose another school, they will campaign against an APS levy. Promises have been broken. Trust has been shattered. Actions speak louder than words. Our residents won't vote for a levy based on promises of something in the future. Been there, done that. They need something to convince them that they matter. Closing Pfeiffer Elementary School will send the signal that they don't. In fact, someone even said, I'd love to relocate my family to Kenmore. I love Kenmore First Fridays, but I don't have anywhere to send them to school here. We don't have large nonprofits, influential leaders, and well-to-do advocates speaking out for us. But we have a grassroots movement centered on the youth and the arts that is worth investing in, not disinvesting from. On March 13th, you publicly promised not to further shrink APS's footprint in the Kenmore community. Please show our voters that they matter too, because I've heard it loud and clear. They will hold you accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Josh Gippen.
A lot of people here today speaking on behalf of Kenmore. I think that is a testament to just how much passion, how much the community cares about this particular issue. I'm Josh Gippen, Executive Director of Better Kenmore, Community Development Corporation. I'm also the father of a recent Miller South graduate. So I'm here today to advocate for 2 groups that have been neglected and passed over in APS's long plan to build new schools. Kenmore is a low to middle income neighborhood with a population of around 10,000 Akron residents. That's over 10% of Akron's total population. But based on APS's investment in Kenmore to build new schools there, you would think it comprised perhaps 1%. Again, that's over 10% of Akron's population in an area that is low to middle income. If APS believes in equity, the right thing to do is invest in Kenmore. You're almost to the finish line. Build a new school for Miller South and Pfeiffer on the site of the former Kenmore High. You have the ability to do it now, without a levy, and doing so would be a promise fulfilled. I know we need to pass a levy, and our best chance at passing it is by showing Kenmore residents and the Miller South community that you keep your promises. Now let's talk about Miller South. My daughter Hannah just graduated from there and had an incredible academic experience there over the past 5 years. In spite of the fact that the months of September and May were nearly unbearable due to the lack of air conditioning in the building. And that's just the beginning. These teachers, administrators, and students have a right to at least the bare minimum, to learn in an environment where they aren't sweating and uncomfortable. Not to mention the days they actually had to close the school due to heat. Even if you do vote to build a new school for Miller South, they'll have to endure this for another probably 3 years while the new school is being built. And if you vote no, to me that's unacceptable. And is it any surprise that arts education gets the crumbs? Not surprising that the arts have been considered less important, that the art school is last in line for a new building. But that's a mistake. To think an arts education doesn't prepare our children for a successful future is a mistake, especially now. In this world that is changing at such a rapid pace, with technologies like artificial intelligence that are transforming the shape of our workforce and forcing us to question what it even means to be human. We need the arts more than ever in this new world. So I come to you today and I make this plea: do the right thing. Invest in Miller South, invest in the arts, invest in Kenmore. Both of these communities have waited patiently, and it's long overdue. Not referring to each of you personally, but this institution, this APS board, has neglected and disinvested in both our city's arts community and in Kenmore. You have the chance to make it right today. Build a new 4th to 8th grade visual and performing arts school, a new Pfeiffer Elementary on the site of the former Kenmore High. When it comes time to vote for the new school levy, it will be a vote of confidence. And I have faith it will pass with flying colors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So just as a preview, so thank you all of you who've come to address the board tonight. So just as a preview, we're going to move to Dr. Thompson's presentation on the LTOP, and then I'm going to call an audible because I know a lot of people are here because they want to see how we're going to vote on this tonight. And I'm going to call an audible. We're going to move right to section 29, and after his presentation, we'll vote after Dr. Thompson's done. So that way, those of you who were here tonight wanting to see how this is going to result are not waiting until 7:30 for that. So, Dr. Thompson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hall, and Ms. Zotley, for the opportunity to present. Once again, I hope that we can put it in a fairly clear and concise way so that you as board members making what clearly is a very, very difficult decision, at least you can make it with the most information possible. So that is the goal. You've seen this information before, but I think it behooves us to take a look at it again. So Resolution 29.1, option 1 is the Kenmore option. So it is in 2 phases. So what you are voting for clarity tonight is there's 29.1 and there's 29.2. 29.1 is Kenmore, 29.2 is North. You're voting on phase 1 of each of those, not phase 2. Phase 2 is just what the plan would be moving after a resolution was passed and that work was completed. So the proposed changes in operations would be closing of buildings, the OT building, and relocate those programs, closing Miller South upon the completion of a new build, Firestone Park closed in June 24. Again, Pfeiffer would close and be relocated to the new facility. Stewart ELP and Essex ELP would close in June of 24. We would relocate STEM High School. We're still working on a location on UA's campus. Another option is to relocate to Garfield CLC. Construction on a new Kenmore school in grades K through 8, we project to open in fall of 2026. That would include relocating Pfeiffer Elementary students, K-5, to the Kenmore site, and relocating the Performing Arts Program, Miller South Performing Arts Program, grades 4 through 8 to that same Kenmore site, separated into 2 wings. We will be moving all East 6th grade students to ECLC. That's already been voted on, but just for clarity, that's part of the plan. We would open those new preschool programs in the elementaries where space is available. And then when we talk about equity, I don't think we can talk about equity without talking about athletic facilities as well. So the plan is to construct a new athletic complex in phases on the former Kent Middle School campus. We would begin that construction when revenue becomes available, and we would seek business partners and outside funding to support those projects. So one option, of course, is to put STEM High School on a location on UA's campus. The second option is on the 2nd floor of Garfield High School. We budgeted $2 million for those retrofits, if that is the decision that we would be moving towards. This resolution does not ask you to make a decision on the location of STEM High School tonight. So what does Resolution 29.1, Option 1, Kenmore look like? Those closing of buildings, the deferred maintenance and staffing reductions, is an estimated savings of $2,230,000 per year. The project budget for the Kenmore building is $61 million. That includes the demo of the current Kenmore High School. The athletic complex, again, is revenue generated outside of the school, and the North Campus is phase 2 of this plan, so it doesn't hit the initial phase 1 budget. Retrofits for STEM is $2 million, I mentioned previously, for a $63 million price to construct this facility. Certificates of participation we've talked about before, but for those of you that haven't heard this term, it's essentially a low-interest loan that works like a mortgage. So that COPS deal, which stands for Certificates of Participation, would be for an amount of $35 million, $13 million coming from ESSER 3 or general funds, $15 million coming from the LFI funds, but does require support from the city. Those total funds equal $63 million. The yearly cost for 30 years as a mortgage payment on the COPS deal is $2,286,828 per year. Our deferred maintenance and staffing reductions, which I spoke about earlier, that's why it's so imperative to hold these cuts for the long term. That's $2,230,000. So the impact on the general fund is $56,000 per year hit on the general fund. So this is just showing you what the cost is for construction. Construction's jumping 15 to 20% per year. So option 1, phase 2, is to construct the North High School campus. That would be completed in August of 2028. Of course, it's levy dependent. We would seek a 1.75 mil permanent improvement levy in approximately May of 2024. Of course, that is at the board's decision at your discretion. We would continue construction of the new athletic complex in phases. Again, seeking those outside business partners. So the total budgetary impact for phase 2 is $83.5 million. The potential funding is a COPS deal again at $83.5 million. That's a large number in payback of $5.3 million, but it is offset, almost completely offset, by the funds from the PI levy, and that is a hit on the general fund of $439,260 per year. So this plan makes these projects affordable. Again, here's a look at the cost, and just in comparison to what Garfield was just a few years ago, you can see the increase in construction costs. So here is our 5-year forecast that was filed in May. It actually looks better. Kudos to Superintendent Outley for her and her team's work on balancing 24's budget. That's a red number right now. You can see a deficit number of $6,500,000. It's no longer a deficit number, but the trend is still important to note. As you can see on that revenue surplus or deficit line, we continue to deficit spend more and more and more across the 5-year forecast for a $40 million, almost $41 million deficit in 2027. Adding this project just adds a couple $100,000 to that deficit and puts us at $41,101,000 deficit. That is predicated on the savings of $2.2 million. That's $8.9 million over the life of the 5-year forecast. And the total cost of the COPS is $9.1 million. So it's essentially the difference between the two. So impact on our scholars. They'll attend new and more updated schools. We bring equity to our 6th grade experience across the entire school district. Places an educational facility on the Kenmore campus. There are cons. The plans do not address House Bill 110 concerns and our declining student enrollment across the district. There is a financial impact. Places STEM high school in the existing building off the UA campus, potentially, but potentially not. Plan requires redistricting of North students in the North cluster, may require additional busing, and North High School will require significant repairs, upgrades prior to being replaced. So the second option, Resolution 29.2, Option 2, those are the same closures as you saw previously at different timelines, though. Note the different timelines. So to address a concern I heard that Pfeiffer would close, there's no plan presented in either one of these that would close Pfeiffer without a new build on the Kenmore campus. Note, it says Pfeiffer Elementary, but it's slated for June 2029, predicated on the same idea that a PI levy would pass first and that building would get built. Construction of the new North Campus by August of 2026. Again, the same situation with relocating the STEM high school. Same with the 6th graders, preschool programs, that same change, and the athletic facility would still continue as it would in the previous 29.1 Option 1 plan. So the deferred maintenance remains the same. The cost of this building is $83.5 million. That includes the demo. There's no cost for the athletic complex or the retrofit, and the retrofits for STEM at $2 million, bringing that price tag to $85.5 million for the North Campus. The certificates of participation go from $33 million to $57.5 million, $13 million from ESSER and general funds, the LFI funds of $15 million. The price tag on that yearly is $3,700,000. You have the reductions, leaving us carrying a deficit each year of $1,470,000. The phase 2 is just the last plan reversed. So now you're relocating Pfeiffer and the Performing Arts program to the Kenmore site. It is predicated on the passage of a levy. The construction of Kenmore building at $61 million, the passage of the $1.75 mil PI levy with a $61 million budget. That annual debt is $3.9 million. The levy brings in $4.9 million, leaving a surplus of $740,000 per year. So again, impacts on the general fund. You can see the North plan has a higher impact on the general fund. So you have a savings of $2.2 million. That's a savings of $8.9 million over the life of the 5-year forecast. The annual COPS payments equal $14,803,000, leaving you a net effect on the forecast of negative $5,883,312. So again, there are pros and cons to this plan as well. Scholars will attend a newer, more updated school. We address the East sixth grade cluster issue, addresses the need for a new facility on the North Hill. Cons, again, it does not address House Bill 110 concerns. There is a slightly higher financial impact. Does not address the desire to place a school on the Kenmore site. Plan still requires redistricting of the North students. This does not solve that problem. May require additional busing. Miller South and Pfeiffer will require significant upgrades and improvements. So all the buildings in question are in need of significant repairs. And there is no easy answer to a very difficult situation that you find yourselves in as a school board. Any questions?
Mr. Perry.
Yes, sir.
So I have a couple, Steve. So in both options, it seems to be that North High School is affected either way with the redistricting aspect, right?
That's correct.
Is there one option that has a lower or higher number of kids that are affected by that? You know, more families are affected in option 1 versus option 2 with the redistricting?
Well, there are approximately 910 students that attend North High School, and there are approximately about 750 kids that would attend, currently attending Pfeiffer and Miller South.
Okay. And both plans also require additional busing, right?
That's correct.
For those North High School scholars.
That's correct.
I did also note it in the both plans here, the STEM high school relocating to a new facility on UA campus.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Where is that facility?
Well, here's what I wanted to get this resolved first, but I know that Mary and I have plans to try to make contact with the university. We know they have declining student enrollment as well, which gives me hope that the rent that we would pay, that we're currently paying the university, might benefit the university and might encourage our students to continue their education at the University of Akron, hoping that we can find a win-win on that campus, quite frankly. So I want to explore that before I would say this is a recommendation. I want to run that to its end first.
Okay, and then option number 2, the North plan also relocates Garfield CLC.
I'm sorry?
You have relocate Garfield CLC, grades 9 through 12 retrofits.
Yeah, that's a potential option if we had to move STEM to Garfield.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
As an option,
Yeah.
as an option. Again, that's not crucial for you to determine tonight. You know, obviously, the most important piece is which project are we going to move forward on. That's the critical piece.
So to that point, again, nothing that we're voting on tonight has any impact on STEM.
Yeah.
No.
Correct.
It has no impact immediately, but I wanted to know, exactly what.
No.
future- Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So
But
Mr.
the
Perry.
public also. I mean, we all want to know that.
Yeah, so I think, Mr. Perry, so I think the other thing I would add too is I know that there have been some conversations we've had about Reedinger Middle School as a possible landing spot for the STEM high school. So that's not included in here. But again, I think to your point, Mr. Perry, and I think to Dr. Thompson as well, we still have to have more conversations around what we ultimately would do at STEM. This is just more of a placeholder that we have reflected in the phase 1 and in the 2 options tonight.
Yeah.
I think that's accurate.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, gotcha. Mr. Alexander.
Yes, this is a tough situation, tough decision that we're going to have to make. And I just have some concerns, and this has been on my mind all weekend. We don't want to displace Kenmore anymore, which I don't want to see that happen. But on the other hand, we need to make sure that the kids at North get something. That's been one of our schools that's been the fastest growing population. But they don't have, it's the only high school in the city of Akron that has not been rebuilt as well. And so I think we need to make sure or figure out a way, if we could, somehow that we can get this North, because I'm just afraid that if we don't begin to do something with North High School now, we're probably not going to be able to do it. And even in our time frame, we're saying, was it 2028 or whatever it may be? Because what I've had people come to me and tell me, the way that the economy is, the way that things are going, the prices of all the things that are going up, including what they're talking about possibly with electricity and some other utilities, that people are going to be tapped out, and they're not going to be able to afford to pass a levy and pay more taxes. And so that becomes a concern, because now if we don't pass a levy, then you don't have North High School being built, which has the highest growing population and a group of students who are doing well, who are graduating and doing really well from that cluster. And now they don't get a new high school. And now we continue to end up maybe patching those holes and things that they have at that school district. And so I'm just really concerned about that. And it's just kind of bothered me, because, like I said, over the weekend, going back and forth, because I want to make sure that Kenmore gets what they need, but I also want to make sure that we look at North High School, because those kids need something right now. And I didn't know if there's some way we could massage what we're doing and say, hey, can we kind of do both of these in somewhat like a phase, one phase here, one phase there, and working on both of those, while at the same time, hopefully the monies will be coming in and we can continue to move forward with that. But I just don't want to see, because now you give North High School students not a place to go, or have a place, but it's patched up, it gets worse. And as we say with our homes, when you neglect something, it gets worse and worse and worse. And then next thing you know, we have a building that's like our old Garfield building that was dilapidated and torn down and could possibly have some type of issues with people getting harmed. And then we have a bigger problem on our hand. So I just want to make sure that we could possibly do that, because I'm not comfortable right now with either one of the plans. I wish there was something else, but we got to make sure we figure out something. I know I'm looking at cost as well. I know it costs more to build North High School, but we got to do something with that. Thank you.
Mr. Perry?
Yeah, to my colleague's point, one of the plans, I forget which one, I don't see which one it was right now, but didn't it include, I guess it was the first plan, it would be significant repairs to North right now, right? It's an immediate thing. Do we have a dollar amount? Do we know what those repairs would be right now for North?
Yeah, so the plan right now immediately with North High School is we had a main door that wasn't locking, that just simply needed entirely replaced. We had a significant leak that wasn't a roof leak that was coming, that was very difficult to repair, but we finally believe we have fixed that repair. The biggest cost is to continue the air conditioning, and we have to put a new roof on the building.
Okay.
Those would be repairs that would absolutely need to be made if we don't move on this building. There are repairs that need to be made to really all three buildings.
Sure.
So there'll be money shifted from general fund for some building, no matter what you choose.
Okay.
There's going to be expenditures for facility repairs.
Okay.
Yes.
And that would happen immediately. It wouldn't be anything that's put off.
No,
Okay.
actually, that's why I'm hoping we can make a decision, because we've been holding off on these plans and we're losing our summer. So if we're going to tear a roof off and put a new roof on, I'd much rather get the lion's share of that done during the summer than I would to do it during the fall, but that may be the case. Roofs have been repaired while students are in school. It can happen, but it's not ideal.
One other thing. So we've had a lot of North teachers coming in, and students as well, talking about health concerns at North High School. Those things addressed by the immediate plans you have to repair it?
Yeah, so air quality was the one that captured my attention. We ran the air quality checks, and the air quality in North High School is completely within standards. So that's a misnomer. I'm not sure exactly how that starts, but it's not accurate.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Dr. Thompson,
Mr. Alexander, yeah.
I have something else. And this came, my colleague just mentioned, this had brought this to my attention too. We're talking about the cost. You know, we're talking about the cost now that we have to repair all of our schools. Have we cost that out for several years, even past the time of a levy if we don't pass a levy? And what would those numbers be? How much would we be spending there?
Are you talking about buildings across the whole district?
Well, talking about the main buildings we're talking about now. We're talking about, you're talking about Miller South, you're talking about Pfeiffer, you're talking about North High School. We got to do a lot to those schools. But we're talking about now, but what about also past that time? And if we don't pass a levy, what are we going to do? And how high is that cost going to go? Is it going to continue to get higher and higher? Plus, you talk about construction and the construction of new buildings. That cost is going to get higher and higher. So we're going to be losing out, somewhere.
Yeah, well, certainly a great point, Mr. Alexander. If someone asked me which building's going to cost the most the quickest, I couldn't give you an honest answer, because they're both, really, 3 of those buildings are essentially on life support and major areas of concern. We know the roof at North has to be replaced. We're aware of that. Miller South isn't far behind. Miller South windows are in significant disrepair. One of the challenges that exists in both buildings, all 3 buildings, the heating system is buried inside the concrete of the floors and walls. So the cost to, just because you have a leak, you don't know exactly where the leak is. Now we've got to rip up X number of feet of concrete to get to those. So when we flip the heat on, it's with a prayer. So, ideally, if I had the funds, or I had a way to tell you that with confidence that I thought we could afford it, I would say build both of them. But the reality is, it would be fiscally irresponsible of me or Ms. Outley to recommend to you as a school board that we should build both of these buildings.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the cost too. Say what it costs now. So that's 1 year compounded by another year.
Sure.
Compounded by another year.
Well, that's the same with new builds,
right.
Repairs, you name it. That's the reality of where we are.
Okay.
Dr. Marlar?
Reviewing the slides, and thank you for doing all of this again. Version, I don't know what letter we're on.
That's a lot.
But I noticed that in one version, it looked like North High School would get a new building in 2026, and in another building, the North High School would get a new building in 2028. But then the other version, Kenmore would get a new building in 2026, but their second option building would be 2029. Can you help me to understand why one option we have everyone in a new building in 2028, and another version everyone's in a new building in 2029?
There's gremlins in my office, and they probably changed that number to 2020. It's a guess, honestly, and I thank you for catching that. It's a guess if it would be 28 or 29. It would the second building is all dependent on when a levy could be passed. If it takes 1 try, 2 tries, 3 tries, would really be the driving force when those buildings would be built. So it's my best guess, but I would err on the side of caution and have the later number as the number to follow.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So then to clarify, it doesn't, not that it doesn't matter which option we pick, but regardless of the option we pick, building 1 is in the same year and building 2 is in the same year. It's just a 1 versus 2?
That's correct.
Okay. And then my next question is, you did mention, if we make a decision today or if we wait a few months, if we wait till it's July now, so August or September, how far back would it push those deadlines because of winter? Does it push it back 1 or 2 months, or does it push it back a whole season because of winter?
There's 2. That's a complex question. But the first area of concern would be our facilities folks who are waiting to pull the trigger on which building are we going to repair, which we wanted to do during the summer. So that's on hold. So that creates a bit of a challenge. And of course, we're losing good months of construction right now, but it takes several months just to prepare funding, documents, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to get some dirt moved before the winter sets in. But if we can't do that, then we would be pushing to the fall, and some of these numbers would push, obviously, a few months longer than what we originally anticipated. So I was hoping, when we began this process, I believe I was warned that it might take a little while, and I thought, okay, we'll have this done by no later than February 15th. I'll bet a paycheck on it. Well, I've lost a couple paychecks, I think, on it. So, you know, it is what it is. And there is some ESSER concerns as well.
Other questions? Dr. Marna?
So in both of these, the second building is not contingent on levy, but it needs the levy for us to.
It is contingent on a levy, at least as I've presented it.
But if other potential funding sources beyond a levy, I don't know if anyone's watching and has a whole lot of money to donate to Akron Public Schools. This is our treasurer. He accepts checks and money orders, right? Would that be something that we would be able to consider, and also if that happened, would it possibly speed up the timeline or no?
So, you know, certainly we're going to be focusing donations on, or at least what we envisioned was the athletic facilities on the Kent Roosevelt campus. That was the intent. So for example, Garfield High School has a 60-yard basically patch of grass, and that's their only exterior athletic facilities. But that Kent campus is pretty close to Garfield High School, for example. So even if we could do something like initially get a turf field down, you know, with $1 million in donations, that would benefit the community greatly and provide an incredible athletic complex or practice facility for Garfield until we could generate more funds and get the stadium built around it. And then you've seen the plans that calls for field house, football stadium, a softball field, and a baseball diamond and a track, which are all things that we really need from an athletic perspective to provide equity across our district and to better schedule our athletic events, because, you know, we're borrowing football fields and we're shipping kids to home fields for home games that aren't their home fields or home games. So that would not be the answer to all of our problems, but it would be a really nice addition moving in the right direction. And fortunately for us, if you're familiar with that area, it's pretty centrally located in the city and it's right off the exit ramp. So it provides, and there's already a parking lot there, and the ground is almost completely flat. So there's not a significant amount of money in excavation to put those fields in.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Well, I'm sorry, but I should have answered. I didn't fully answer your question. Yes, we will pursue grants and any opportunity we can through the state. A basket's going to come around here in a few minutes.
The offering?
Yeah, the offering, yeah.
For the building fund.
Yeah, for the building fund. Help the children. That's going to be that's our tagline, help the children.
Mm-hmm. Other questions or comments, thoughts? Before we proceed to voting on one of these two plans. Ms. McKittrick?
Oh, this is so difficult. I'm trying to think about what gives us the biggest bang for the buck, right? So if we do
I'll call it the Kenmore versus the North option. So if we do the Kenmore version, we take care of what would probably become a blighted Kenmore High School property. We take care of the aging Pfeiffer building, and we take care of the aging Miller South building. So that's 3 things handled with that Kenmore option. And it's less expensive than the North option. So in my brain, Lord only knows how it works, but in my brain, that's the only option. And because it gives us so much bang for our buck, and it's a less expensive option too, so.
Well,
Mr. Perry?
To Ms. McKittrick's point, that's why I asked the questions about, if we do that option, we can still take care of some immediate needs at North right now. So to me, it becomes almost a no-brainer. I mean, I'm looking at the options, Kenmore's got to be handled. We can't alienate these people. We can't alienate Kenmore from our Akron community. So it's got to be handled. So to her point, we want to take care of North. We can solve immediate needs. The health concerns are being addressed. We can do that. So I'm with you.
Ms. Autry?
Thank you. And so I know we're talking all of these numbers here, and they absolutely do matter. And I just like to also state that several things can exist at the same time. So I'm going to bring up the fact that North is a school with students who are marginalized. Period. And that's really like the statement. That's not a knock against the Kenmore community at all, but they are our most vulnerable school in this particular situation. And it's not a knock. And at the same time, yes, Kenmore is thriving, growing. I'm so happy to see the revitalization. I'm sorry about the past, that I unfortunately was not here to be a part of that decision. And in 2003, when the community supported a levy, this district had 32,000 students. And I believe we're now under 20,000. And so it is different. It's not a matter of us versus them, and I reject that narrative that's out there that's trying to create this Kenmore versus North situation, because it's not that. We're here for the entire district, all of the children. And we talk about equity. That's been a hallmark of this board since I've been on it. And decisions related to that aren't always easy, and they're not always comfortable. And so I'm just here to remind us that although the North community is not here, I'm aware of some of their culture. They're not going to be here like this. It doesn't mean they don't care. It doesn't mean they don't deserve it. But both communities deserve it. And so I'm just stating that because this is not an easy decision. And so I don't look down upon the Kenmore community. I don't think you're less deserving. But also another reality, and it might be tough to hear, is that the enrollment wasn't there for a new building when it was time to address that. That's the reality of what was happening at the time. Not in 2003, but when the phase came, that was the situation. And so the state would not support the funding at that time based on the enrollment. So one of the unfortunate repercussions, when you open enroll out of a community, then you lower the enrollment in your own community. And so I'm happy to see that it's growing and coming back. I would like us, in an ideal world, to rally around the entire district and support our most vulnerable students. That's what ideally I'd like to see. I understand the anger, the frustration, because a few short years ago I wasn't in this seat. So I just wanted to share that this is not an easy decision. But if we're about APS, then we're about APS. All means all, right?
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Dr. Monar.
Thank you, Ms. Audrey, for saying all that, because I completely, I hear everything you're saying. And with the North students, it's great to see so many people from Kenmore. It's great to see people excited about the school district. I hope to continue, regardless of what happens today, to see the same people and more. Bring a friend next time and rally around more support for our schools and things like that, because I don't think it's that the North families don't care. I think it's because the North families aren't as able to make it here. I think they want it just as bad as you want it. I think they deserve it just as bad as you deserve it. I love what you said, all means all. They are our most vulnerable students. I'm not saying that what you have is not good. I'm not saying that what you have is not in need. They are our most vulnerable, but I do have a question for our treasurer after this, or as part of this, because they are our most vulnerable students. Vulnerable. I'll say it right sometime. Does that provide additional opportunity for us when seeking grants through the government and things like that? Are there potentially additional revenue streams that we could get for North that we could not get for Miller South if we made North second?
There are a lot of requirements for various grants. Typically, the first question asked on any grant application is, what is your free and reduced lunch count? They're looking at students in poverty. They look at minority students. They look at disabled students. They'll often look at students with English language as English as their secondary language. So all of those play a part, but I don't want to mislead anyone. 28 years of doing this and been through a fair number of construction projects. I've never been successful in acquiring grants for facility builds. So if they're out there, I'm unaware of them. If someone that is listening and knows about them, I'm certainly open to that. And it certainly doesn't mean that we can't talk to our legislators and see because the legislatures can do whatever they want. They can pass a law, they could craft a bill. There is Ohio school construction facilities money, but you're all very aware of that because those were the funds that built the $800 million in schools that we have built up to this point, which is 35 new school buildings. So again, we'll seek all we can find, but I would be hesitant to tell you that making a decision based on which group might be more likely to attract grants is probably not sound.
Are there other comments or questions?
I just want to make just one last general comment. You know, we've done this obviously now for several meetings and several weeks and months. And I just want to thank everyone who came out, in everybody's community. Like, you said we're all Akron. This is all Akron. All means all. So, Kenmore, North, everybody who came out, Pfeiffer, everybody who came out and showed their support, just thank you. I listened, and I know my colleagues did the same thing, and we took it all to heart. And this is going to be a very hard decision. But I hope we make the right decision for all of Akron, all of APS. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Appreciate that. Are there other comments or thoughts anybody has? Questions? Then I'll make it. I guess I'll weigh in as well. So first, obviously I'm a 1994 North High School graduate, right? So again, I'm a Viking. I'll always be a Viking. And so when I hear the folks from Kenmore talk about the Fighting Cardinals, I understand how you feel, right? Because I know how I would feel if North High School closed tomorrow and we had no more Vikings, and so I know I'm also a human being, right? And so I know I would love to see us do North High School first, because I'm a North High School Viking. I see some North High School teachers in the audience, one of whom I went to high school with, that now teaches at North. So I know that she knows how I feel too. And I played sports at North High School, not well, very mediocre. But again, I was super involved there, so I had the full high school experience. And when I think about the word marginalized, for example, I had to Google it because I wanted to make sure I had the right definition. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, marginalized refers to a person, group, or concept that are treated as insignificant or peripheral. I hope the day never comes that we treat the families on North Hill as if they are insignificant or peripheral. I know the day has already come, though, that where we have treated the Kenmore families as, in my opinion, as insignificant and peripheral. It's something I would like to. I think this board has an opportunity to address or redress this evening. When you think about the schools on North Hill, and my uncle was a teacher at Jennings as well. Every single student that is on North Hill attends a newer school, K through 8. Except the kids that we bus from Harris Jackson over to Essex, right, due to the overcrowding, right? But again, every single one of our marginalized kids on North Hill attend a newer building, K through 8. Now we turn to North High School, grades 9 through 12. Well, North is not perfect, as we've heard multiple times. There are repairs that need to be addressed, things that need to be done. I too was concerned about the air quality component. And so hearing the results of that study candidly took a huge weight off my shoulder hearing that, because it's hard to ask students and kids to be in an area where the air quality is compromised. So I was very relieved to hear that. But I also think about the Miller South kids. I think our speaker talked about the arts getting the crumbs. Miller South has been around since the early 1990s. And it's been asked to be in a building that is, in my opinion, deplorable, and for 30 years. So many of our kids at Miller South, they're at Miller South because they have been bullied someplace else, or would be bullied someplace else, being who they are as an artistically talented, student. And so I am sensitive to that group getting the crumbs, I think, as it was put. And so also Miller South, the grades there are grades 4 through 8. Pfeiffer is K through 5. So these are little kids, right, at Pfeiffer, and younger kids at Miller South that are both in schools that are not in good condition. They're not in a newer school like the kids at North Hill are, right? Every kid at North Hill, K through 8, is in a newer school. Every single one of them. Minus the kids we bus to Essex, which we're trying to figure out a solution for that. So in my head, I think about, we've got older kids, 9 through 12, that we're asking to go to a school that's a building that's not great, but serviceable, versus kids who are the little kids that we're saying, you know what, stay at Pfeiffer, stay at Miller South, buildings that are in, from a factual standpoint, in worse condition, And so when I think about equity, that's not equity either, And so when I think about little kids versus older kids, I think about marginalized and unmarginalized. I would humbly submit that there are marginalized families in Kenmore as well, And we could get into which community has more marginalized kids, but that takes us down a destructive path. But to Ms. Autry's point about her fear, I have the same fear, that tonight, that all anybody's going to remember about tonight's deliberation is that this was a Kenmore versus North thing. And it never, and so I reject that narrative too. This is not about Kenmore versus North. This is about the fact that we're facing difficult realities. There are fiscal and budgetary restraints, right? We're looking at students from historically marginalized groups on North Hill. We're talking about families that meet the same profile in Kenmore. We're talking about little kids in Kenmore, older kids in North High School. And you're right, Ms. Vickers, this is not an easy decision that we're being asked, that we're going to make tonight. But I would tell you, after having said all that, I would echo the sentiments of those of you that have, Ms. Vickers, I think you said it best. I think the Kenmore option is the option that we need to pursue tonight. Pursuing that option does not mean that we are saying no to a new building for North High School. That's not what it's saying at all. It's saying that we have to continue as a board and as a community to passionately advocate for a new building on North Hill. And to the speakers that came in tonight and have come in over the past several months, as I listened to that commentary, I would not expect anybody in Kenmore to trust this board. Now, we may argue that that's not fair, but that's just the reality. You know, that's a community that feels aggrieved, and I would argue, some of you may disagree with me, but I would argue rightfully so. And I would not expect that community to support a levy. I wouldn't if I lived in Kenmore. I wouldn't. You know, and I understand we have facts, as Ms. Autry laid out, that support the declining enrollment and how that had an impact on why there was not a new building there, and why certain promises were not kept. But I also know, sitting in this seat, that that boundary lines have been moved in the past. Notice I didn't use the word manipulated. I said they have been changed. They have been moved in the past, and that has also adversely impacted enrollment for different schools in different parts of the city. That we also had to be mindful of. We've moved the boundary between Booktown and Firestone multiple times. You know, the boundary between Kenmore and Garfield has been moved. Between Garfield and East has been moved. So these are all boundaries that have all been played with over the years, that have impacted or adversely impacted enrollment in different parts of the city that we have to be able to talk honestly about as well. You know, so to my North High School alumni, you know, who I've heard from many of you over the last few weeks, I apologize because I'm not going to support option 2 tonight. But what I will support is continuing to advocate, working with the city of Akron. You know, I know that we've had some conversations with some folks in the state legislature that there's the possibility that Governor DeWine may have some room in his budget for capital expenditures, to your point, Dr. Molnar, that we could possibly have access to. That we would absolutely reach out to, to solve, to help address some of the funding issues, whether it be for Miller South if we don't choose that option, or for North if we don't choose that option. But either way, this board still has work to do to ensure that we get both these buildings built. So I will leave it there, and unless there's other commentary, I'm going to ask us to move. We're going to, again, I said, Mr. Alexander, please.
This is a very tough decision, and I want everyone to know that.
That's why you got to get paid big bucks.
I know. The big bucks, right? That's right. That's why we're sitting in these seats.
Missed that.
Thank you. It is tough. I will advocate as well for helping all the students in our district, all the staff and so forth. But it's just going to be a tough, this is a decision I'm just not going to make tonight. I'm not going to make it. Again, I appreciate the people from Kenmore. I understand where you're coming from. I understand it. But I also understand, too, that North was in the same situation years ago, and so it's kind of tough. And I also have to think about being fiscally responsible because of the dollars. So I'm not going to vote at all on either one of these tonight, just so everyone knows. And I will go with what my colleagues decide to vote with, and then we will hopefully advocate so that we can get some of these things worked on as we move forward. And hopefully there will be monies, as you said, Doctor, that we can hopefully get in that will help us to make sure this situation is handled so all of our kids can get it. But I will not be voting for either one tonight. Thank you.
All right. Is there additional, Dr. Molnar?
And I just want to reiterate again, if you can't tell, because we've said it a million times, this is very difficult. These are lives, these are families, these are your homes, which is your primary investment. And all of our students deserve new buildings. All of them do. And I hope that regardless, I'm going to reiterate, regardless of what happens tonight, even if we are able to secure additional funds through the government, through the legislature, we are still going to need a levy. And regardless of what happens tonight or next month or et cetera, I would hope that all of you still continue to come out, and especially if North ends up being the second building. I really hope to see all of you come out and support the rest of your district and the people who weren't able to be here tonight to advocate for their buildings.
I think the other thing, too, to that point is there's building and building, and then there's paying to program it, right? So a levy passing is imperative to not just putting a building, hypothetically, in North Hill or Miller South, but also keeping that building up and running, right? Because we got to pay to program and operate it, right? So the levy, so we're still going to need levy support to pass. I mean, in order to keep the buildings up and running anyway, you know. So that's integral to this conversation. So I will pause there. So we have. Oh, Ms. Autry, did you? Okay. So you reach for your thing there. So now we're going to move to item 29.1. So for simplicity's sake, item 29.1, I'm going to call it the Kenmore option. Item 29.2 is a North option. So what we're going to do is we're going to vote on the Kenmore option first by roll call. We have the full resolution is in the board docs. I will only read the first sentence because, again, I'm not going to read through the entire thing because Dr. Thompson's walked through the varying components of what will be contained herein. But basically, this is the resolution to proceed with the closure of school facilities and the construction of a new school facility on the former site of the Kenmore High School. Is there a motion?
I so move to approve option 1.
It's been properly moved by Mr. Perry. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. McKittrick. Any discussion? Ms. Autry.
Thank you. I know we actually already had all the discussion, I think. Now that we've actually on the floor for discussion, I just actually want to also reiterate Dr. Molnar's statement that I would hope that we rally around our most vulnerable school to make sure that we all, the entire district gets what it needs. So I just wanted to reiterate that statement.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Autry. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Perry? No. Nope. Oh, okay, sorry. All right. Roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Abstain.
Mrs. Autry.
No.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1
With one exception.
with one abstention.
So next we'll proceed. We don't need to proceed to option 2 then, do we?
I think you should still vote.
Yeah, we'll still vote on it. So we'll go to option number 2. I'll refer this as a North option, a resolution to proceed with the closure of school facilities and the construction of a new school facility at North High School. Is there any, is there a motion? Okay. So this, all right, that's it. All right, there's no motion, so we will move on with our agenda tonight. So next we're going to pivot back. So I know those of you who came to observe that part, we're going to go back to the approval of previous meeting minutes. Again, I want to thank my board colleagues for all the discussion, thoughtful questions and commentary as well. I want to thank Dr. Thompson for his presentation. As we said earlier, there's still a lot of work to be done. This is not a vote where victory is declared. This is a vote where we have simply addressed one community and knowing that we have to address another community as well in short order.
There is a sign-up sheet as you exit to sign up to support the levy. Help us volunteer. It'll be right outside
Yes.
there.
And where's
So
the
we could
offering
all
basket?
sign that, yeah.
Where's the offering basket,
Yes,
too? Yeah,
with
yeah.
the basket as
I can
well.
collect if you want. Just
Right.
give it to me. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
There we go. Let's start it.
You're our chairman for the levy campaign.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we're going to proceed to item 4.1, the approval of the previous meeting minutes from 6:26 and 6:29. Is there a motion?
I so move to approve both those meeting minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Perry and seconded by Vice President Autry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson?
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Next, we'll move to items 5. Next we'll move to personal recommendations. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, President Hall. Before asking for your approval, I would like to bring your attention to item 5.1, which is the retirement of Lisa Johnson. Lisa Johnson graduated from the University of Central Oklahoma in May of 1993 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Education and Psychology. She started her career in 1993 as a special education teacher for the Oklahoma City schools. She then moved to Ohio and was hired by Akron Public Schools as a behavior specialist in 1998. She continued her work as a behavioral specialist for 25 years throughout the district. During her tenure, she developed the school-based mental health model and community partnerships that currently are used through the district to support the mental health needs of all of our scholars and their families. She also collaboratively designed the instructional model used to educate scholars with the most significant social emotional needs. This includes our alternative programming needs for our most at-risk youth. Lisa is an asset to the Office of Special Education and the district, and she gives above and beyond in her performance. And so at this time, we would like to congratulate Lisa on her retirement, for the guidance and the leadership that she has provided the district. And we are fortunate to have had her as a resource. So once again, Lisa's not with us this evening, but we did want to recognize her in her absence. At this time, Dr. Hall, I would to recommend approval of the personnel recommendations presented in categories 5 through 16.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Is there a motion to approve the personal recommendations?
So move.
It's been moved by Mr. Alexander. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Mr. Perry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
No on 6.7, 6.9, 6.10, 11.4, 11.8, and 11.9. Yes on the rest.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0 with the exception of those indicated by Mrs. McKittrick.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Next, we'll move to approval of resolutions and motions in the consent agenda. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, President Hall. I wish to recommend approval of the resolutions and motions presented in Category 21. They are in proper format, and I do move their approval.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Perry. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. McKittrick. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson?
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right. Next, we move to business affairs recommendations. Madam Superintendent.
I wish to recommend approval of the business affairs recommendations presented in Category 23.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the business affairs?
So moved.
recommendations? It's been probably moved by Ms. Autry. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Mr. Perry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Mrs. McKittrick,
No on 23.4, 23.5, 23.23, yes on the balance.
Dr. Molnar,
Abstain 23.23, yes on the balance.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes, abstain from 23.22, yes for the rest.
you guys are trying to challenge me.
It's not as easy as it looks, is it?
Yes.
Not as easy as I made it look, Steve. Now you understand. Yeah.
Dr. Hall,
Yes, but I'm going to abstain from, just kidding, just kidding. Just voting yes.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
So we are carry 6-0, with the exception of 23.1, 0.5, 0.23, and then abstain on 23.23, and a abstain on 23.22.
Okay. Next, we'll move to superintendent's report.
Thank you. I would just like to share a quick shout out to Helen Arnold, CLC. In your Friday notes, you may recall seeing that the scholars at Helen Arnold participated in a solar car competition. And I did not send you an update. I was waiting to get the final results. I was so excited to share that while they were in Kentucky, they finished in the top 16, and then they went on to compete in the final round. And out of 70 schools that were competing, they finished 8th in the competition. So congratulations. And they go by the name Hot Cheetos and Takis. And the team was led by our gifted and talented teacher, Stephanie Lippitt. And so we just want to congratulate them. Also, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at our APS website lately, but I just want to bring to your attention that we have done a soft release of our new website. It is currently under construction, but we do want to make sure that you know that it is out there. If you have any input, we are open, but please know that while it is under construction, we will give a full presentation in the near future, not right now, right, Mark? But that's something you can look forward to. And finally, I would just want to give a shout out to our athletic department. They are hosting in collaboration with 100 Black Men of Akron, with Michael Irby as their lead. We are united for our city. This is all of our high school and middle school football players are going to take a knee for unity on Saturday, July 22nd, and their guest speaker is Dr. Lethardius Goggins II. It will take place at Lot 3, downtown Akron, from 1 to 2:30 p.m. So again, we would like to thank the 100 Black Men of Akron for collaborating with our athletic department. Our athletic coach, Joe Vassilotti, is our lead. And if you would like to come, we'll make sure we include that in your Friday notes. That does conclude the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Next, we move to President's report. I have two items. One, again, I just want to reiterate in part what we talked about earlier, in that tonight's vote to move forward on what we're calling the Kenmore option does not mean that the work is done. We still have to do a lot of work in advocating to address the building situation for North High School. And I'm looking forward to working with this board and community members to, as passionate as people were advocating for the Kenmore option, we have to be equally passionate in how we advocate. Sorry, let me amend that. Continue to advocate for what we're calling the North option. And that starts with passing a levy. It also starts with staying in regular contact with our elected officials. We have a state senator, Dr. Sykes, who I know is, has done some checking on this. And maybe even following up with Congresswoman Sykes as well to inquire whether there is maybe some federal dollars that she can help, facilitate moving in our direction to address some of our building issues. But again, but we can leave no rock unturned when we are thinking about how do we, as Ms. Autry so eloquently put it tonight, how do we address our most marginalized families. We have to be the voices advocating for them when they can't advocate for themselves. So as I said earlier, no victory was achieved tonight. It was just moving one heavy rock and knowing that there are multiple more heavy rocks that we're going to have to move as we continue the work of moving this district forward. The other thing, so that's the first item. The second item I wanted to bring up was, those of you who recall Dr. Thompson's earlier presentations, and know that he's done a lot of them in the last several months, but one of them talked about the capacity issues that we face and how there's existing state legislation that, while I won't get into the weeds of that legislation tonight, at a high level essentially allows charter school organizations to force a sale at fair market value of underutilized school buildings. And so we have 12 to 14 of those buildings that fit that profile with a capacity of under 60%. And so one of the things that we're going to have to wrestle with as we move forward is how do we address that? And one of the things I think that we're going to have to be honest about talking to is at least at the elementary school level, where most of those buildings that are under capacity exist, is how do we address our historical policies around enrollment? That is to say, open enrollment. Has the time come, to revisit the open enrollment, with the thought of possibly ending open enrollment, at least at the elementary school level, as a way of addressing some of the capacity issues. I know saying that is very controversial. But I think that, in my humble opinion, I don't think open enrollment was ever the answer because it allowed us to kick the can. From an equity standpoint, we talk about equity, the answer was putting the necessary resources into those buildings that were underperforming, right-sizing, if you will, the funding stream to account for that, as opposed to going to open enrollment knowing full well that not every kid was going to find a seat in some of the schools that are more sought after in West Akron, right? So I look forward to us having a longer conversation about that. As you've heard this board talk about before, thinking about how do we move towards more of an equity-based funding policy and a way of doing business. Again, and what that looks like practically is, we have some schools in West Akron that are at 105% capacity, and others that are at 50% capacity. So the answer is how do we with the quickness, as they would say, how do we address because the funding has to go first. How do we address the funding? How do we alter the way that we fund our schools and our students, and provide the additional resources in schools so kids can walk to school, as opposed to trying to catch a ride, get a bus all the way across town to and from every day. I don't think that is the optimal experience, especially for elementary school kids. And so, but how do we, and let me say one more thing too, the other myth that I think has been promulgated, or propagated, I should say, has been that the teachers in some of these West Side schools are better than the teachers in other parts of Akron. And that's just not true either. we have equally inspiring and inspired teachers who are teaching in some of what we would call our more difficult buildings that are working their tails off for our kids. So we know that we've got good teachers in all of our buildings, right? But again, how do we think thoughtfully about how do we reallocate resources? And I'll give a practical example. A West Side school may have a class size of 26 kids a class. A school that is struggling may have a class size of 18. So that's an example of being thoughtful about how we fund. Because if you have, and this gets back to where's the science in this, right? It can't be arbitrary, but where's the science? So we know that there's now educational literature out there that looks at risk profiles of students, looking at zip code and other circumstances that impact them. You can have, every student in the city can have a risk score assigned. So we're looking at students on the eaches as opposed to trying to lump at a building level. Certainly you can do that in the aggregate as well, but I think the disaggregation of that data I think is especially telling. And so again, there's more than one thing that has to happen here. We have to address capacity, but how do we address it thoughtfully and equitably? And so again, at least at the grade school level, one of the things that you're going to hear us talking about in the coming weeks and months is how do we fast track our equity finance formula, our risk scoring formula, and how do we review the numbers. And I've asked Dr. Thompson already to begin putting together a projection for the board to look at that would show us if we ended open enrollment tomorrow at the grade school level, what would our capacity be in our respective buildings? Would that solve some of it or all of it? Or would there still be gaps that we'd have to address? So I know that this is going to be a controversial topic because, as a parent in another part of Akron whose kid is currently at a West Side school and happy with their experience and happy with their teachers, the thought of being told in a year or two possibly that, oh, wait a minute, your kid has to go to the school in their neighborhood again that you don't think as a parent is a good school, that's going to be incredibly controversial. And so again, I think that's why I'm bringing it up tonight, so we can begin to have this conversation, because God knows that speaking of hard decisions, this won't be an easy one either, and this board may ultimately not decide to vote on moving forward with that. But I think I bring it up just because we also don't want to see a forced sale of one of our CLCs to an outside organization because we couldn't keep kids in that building. So again, I'll leave you with this. It's now 2023. We have loads of data that's out there now on our students and what their various backgrounds and attributes are. But we have to begin to leverage that data now, and work it through our new treasurer and our finance team. An incoming superintendent, who I'm going to introduce here in just a second, so that way we can be thoughtful about how do we address some of these concerns. So I'll stop there and open it for discussion. If anybody has anything that they would like to add or say. Ms. Autry?
I guess I'm actually looking forward to that discussion moving forward. I think it's overdue.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? Okay. Then that concludes the President's report. Next, we'll move to the Treasurer's report. Dr. Thompson.
Just quickly, a thank you to almost every administrator sitting in this room right now played a significant role in over the last 2 years, a year before I even got here, trudging through all that data, really trying to make a plan and present that plan. Deborah was been there the whole time. Rachel was at all the meetings. Keith, everyone has been in meetings for countless hours putting all this together. I think that they just chose me to talk about it because I'm good looking. So if that were only true.
Is there a motion?
But no, sincerely, thank you.
That's well said. Next, we'll move to committee reports. I don't believe we have any committees that have met. So, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Autry.
On behalf of the Finance and Capital Management Committee, now that we've moved one of the rocks, I just want to say out loud that the committee will be moving forward with levy as a strong agenda item. So anyone listening who is interested in helping to support that, particularly from, the Kenmore community, because we need some of that energy, and anyone else who wants to help support this district, come join us moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Next, we move to item 30.1, the new superintendent contract. So this is Resolution 23-085, and again, I'm not going to read the entire thing. I'll read the introductory components of it. Whereas the board has selected Dr. C. Michael Robinson as the district's next superintendent, and whereas in efforts to effectuate a seamless leadership transition in the best interest of the district, the board is also desirous of also employing Dr. Robinson on a short-term temporary basis to work and consult with district leadership prior to assuming his role as superintendent. And whereas Dr. Robinson has graciously accepted his position as superintendent and has indicated his willingness to work and consult with the district leadership on a short-term temporary basis prior to assuming his role as superintendent effective August 1st, 2023. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Akron Public School District Board of Education hereby approves the superintendent employment contract between the board and Dr. Robinson pursuant to the superintendent contract attached hereto and on the file in the Chief Financial Officer's office. So again, this is in the public-facing document that folks can peruse if they would like to read it in its entirety. So, having said that, is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Alexander. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. McKittrick. Is there any discussion? Ms. McKittrick.
Welcome, Dr. Robinson.
Is there any further discussion? So I will say two things. I will say, Dr. Robinson, congratulations. Welcome. We're looking forward to working with you. Ms. Outley, I don't have the words to say how thankful I am for your steady leadership and stabilizing influence on this district and our staff for the last 5 months. We wouldn't be in the position we are today without you. And rest assured, there is a date to be announced where we will give you your flowers in a more proper fashion. But again, I would be remiss if I didn't say again publicly, thank you so much for all that you've done. Again, you have been a thoughtful, stabilizing influence. And the amount of communication I've got from folks that are positive feedback, I should say, advocating for you and your continued partnership with this district. And so again, I just want to say thank you so much, from the bottom of my heart, honestly, for all that you've done. It's been a pleasure to sit next to you, and I thought I was well dressed, but I got to take some notes, and I got to work on some things, but thank you so much. And again, we are organizing a more proper send off for you. So just know that it's coming. You won't know. I mean, the plan is to have you walk into a room and surprise. But again, but thank you for that. So looking forward to celebrating you properly. And again, Dr. Robinson, looking forward to passing the baton to your leadership. This board was entirely excited to bring you on and to work with you. And so, as you sat through the board meeting tonight, you see that there are big rocks and there's a lot of work to do. And we're looking forward to working with you to effectuate the kind of change that I think our kids and parents and families and community deserve. So, thank you, sir, for being here. Also, let me say we are having a press conference tomorrow where we will be properly introducing Dr. Robinson. That's at 1 o'clock. So anybody who's watching, if you'd like to, you can view it or you can come here as well. I think we're going to be in this room for that press conference as well. So we're looking forward to hearing more from you and about you, tomorrow at 1 p.m. So thank you kindly for being here. Is there any? So I know I was the discussion on this topic. Evidently, is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Mrs. Autry.
Yes.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, motion is approved. Next, we will move to item 31.1, which is executive session. I need a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to ORC 121.22G1 for the purpose of considering the employment and/or compensation of a public employee or official of the school district. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Perry and seconded by Ms. Autry. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mrs. Autry.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, there is possible action from executive session. But we stand in recess at 7:30.
You just send me the color. And where we're eating steak at. I'm going to Wise Guys tomorrow.
Welcome back to this regularly scheduled board meeting on Monday, July 10th. It is now 9:31 p.m. We did have one item from executive session. This is resolution number 23-86 that needs a motion to approve.
I move to approve Resolution 23-86.
Okay, it's been probably moved by Mr. Perry. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Vice President Autry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, seeing as though we have no further business, I will accept a motion to adjourn. It's been moved by Mr. Alexander. It's been seconded by Mr. Perry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, we stand in adjournment at 9:33 p.m. Good night, folks.